So, welcome everybody. My name is John Gestel. I'm our client relations, investor relations here at Royalty Exchange. And then I have Rob Bernhard with me, our corporate counsel. Today is November 11th of 2025. We're going to be talking about AI in music. Just as a reminder, if you have questions, please submit them through the Q&A option rather than through the chat. It's easier for us to manage and get questions answered. So please use that. This is being recorded and will be posted at a later date if you need to review it. And without further ado, let's dive in. First, just a couple housekeeping things. We have two new features that have gone live recently that I wanted to point out. The first one is an IRR calculator on every single listing. So you should see it right at the top here. I took a little screenshot of it so you can see it. Basically, it allows you to plug in a 10-year cash flow so you can get a rough calculation of IRR based on the purchase price. That will save your entries. You can clear it whenever you want, but just a little bit of a tool to help you kind of conceptualize what you're looking at, any potential cash flows. Um, so mess around with it. Let us know what you like, don't like about it. Um, it's brand new, so if something's not working for you, obviously let us know so we can make sure that that's working properly. And then what I'm most excited for, we have a new relist request feature, which is awesome. So if any of you have an existing asset that you have to manually ask for it to get reposted, now you have a self-service button to do it. This will be on your buyer dashboard on the pop-up for your asset. Normally where it says view the listing. If it doesn't have a listing, you can request listing. We can also give you update notes and a whole bunch of other great stuff through that. Um, so yeah, take advantage of that too. It's going to make it way easier for us to get stuff back up for you for things that might be a little bit like a monthly paying asset that has to come down every month for an update. You need to get it manually requested. Just hit that button and it goes right to our team to take care of. Um, so some awesome features there. On general royalty performance, I did want to flag this for everybody, which is pretty awesome. We've paid out so far over $17 million in royalty payments to investors. So awesome. You guys are I'd hopefully making money, and that's great for us to see. And we still have, two more months of the year to go, so that's awesome. We have a couple current opportunities live that I wanted to highlight too. Some higher profile artists, which is pretty great. This publishing royalties for Lil TJ are pretty compelling. Then Jack Harlow, DaBaby, Lil Wayne, obviously some big names in hip hop there. So check those out if you have questions. We're putting together some larger investment thesis analyses for these two. So keep your eyes out for those as well, because those are always helpful to read through, get a bit more in depth with stuff. Okay, without further ado, let's get into AI and music. Um, so yeah, I'm sure everyone on this call is pretty aware of AI and what's been happening in the world. It's been really changing the landscape of financial markets and really every company you interact with. I don't know of any companies that don't have AI indoctrinated into their system so far. Um, Now, for music, it presents certain challenges because obviously training these AI models, there's obviously a question of what does this mean for copyright, intellectual property, and how does that all fit together? So, according to SISAC, which is the International Confederation of Societies of Authors and Composers, Um, they predict that AI systems could reduce music creator income by up to 24% by 2028. It equates to about $17 billion, which is a lot. That is a big number. Obviously, that matters for royalty investors too, because you would be buying cash flows of royalty creators. So obviously a concern, something we want to keep an eye on. But it's something that there are lots of companies that want to see done correctly, and most notably performers' rights societies, um, the NMPA, major publishers like Sony, Universal, Warner, etc. Even Spotify, honestly, they want to see it done correctly because the creators aren't being compensated and they won't be able to create more music, and then their whole system will crash. Um, so that all kind of leads to good discussions around how to fairly compensate creators, rights holders for the use of AI and what kind of guardrails need to be in place moving forward as this technology develops. Which is a great question. And how do you do it? So, a couple things that have happened just in recent history. So first, Spotify's AI Artist First program. They announced this just in October. I think it was October 16th. Basically, it's their framework for how they're going to fairly compensate artists. It focuses on four major principles: partnerships with labels and publishers, and other stakeholders. In that regard, um, any artist has a choice in participation. So the opt-in, opt-out thing is something we'll talk about a few times here. Fair compensation for new revenue, and then Spotify, because it's a big part of their whole MO, is the artist fan connection, which is the personal connection, which is another thing that we see kind of a lot since we are dealing with art. Um, so their goal is to create tools using AI to track AI that focuses on these four principles. Um, there's going to be allegedly a lot of collaboration with major stakeholders. We'll see how all that develops. Um, but that's from the DSP side. They obviously have a stake in this too. So this is the latest announcement from the biggest in Spotify. Um, we've also seen similar kind of stances, mostly from STIM and major PROs like ASCAP, SOCAN, and BMI. So in September, STIM announced a new royalty type that they are going to be paying out, which is kind of what we've been looking for in this whole discussion is the new royalty revenue that inevitably will come from this. And that's training data royalties. So AI that's used for training any LLM or any AI engine, there's going to be more AI tracking to find the root use of any kind of property, lyric, whatever, and then allocate compensation to that creator through a royalty. Um, Importantly, Stim has noted that it's not going to be just a flat royalty fee. It's going to be relatively scaling based on the use case, which is good because it should be. Um, but it's still pretty new. That was just announced in September. So again, we'll see kind of what shape it takes and how it translates to royalty revenue and any kind of statements, something like that. So we'll be keeping a close eye on that. Um, but the point is that paying entities are starting to indoctrinate these cash flows to rights holders. So it's going to be interesting to see. Again, it's AI leading AI, so that presents some complications, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Um, but it's good to see that it's starting to materialize in actual revenue streams. So depending on how all these conversations go from all these various entities and stakeholders across the world, we'll see how it grows, but it's promising to see it that's actually leading to compensation. Um, Now, for ASCAP, SOCAN, and BMI, like I wrote in this line here, they are starting to accept partially AI generated works for their repertoire. Um, Now, I couldn't find anything that was totally clear on what constitutes partially. As I understand it, it's works that maybe used AI tools for mastering or, you know, other parts of the technical process of creation of music rather than like, oh, an AI generated tune or lyric. Um, but it wasn't super clear in what I was finding. So again, this is more evidence of paying entities leaning into AI, which again, good to see. Um, that one less promising than actual new AI derived royalty revenue like Stim is doing. But we'll see how it goes. I think that's more geared towards helping creators of all sizes and scales rather than from the investor side. But that can also lead to um, access to more assets if something compelling comes through, ASCAP, for example, and then we end up working with that creator. So you never know, but we'll have to see. And then just this morning, I was reading about Gemma, which is the German performers' rights organization. They just won a lawsuit against OpenAI. Apparently, their local copyright courts de decreed that ChatGPT unlawfully used song lyrics and music in training their generative AI systems before any licenses were in place. That literally I read about an hour ago, so I wanted to add it in here. again, just to show that things are starting to churn. Um, and yeah, so we'll see what happens with that. But it all ultimately, I feel, should lead the STEM route in creating licenses for AI companies to buy to then pay royalties out in new forms. But that's the latest in just the last couple months. So a lot happening, which it has to happen quickly because of how quickly AI is growing. So the merits, obviously things we talked about already, artist choice to participate, fair compensation, and the artistry and human aspect, and then creating a framework for paying royalties that are derived from AI. All positive things, art for the sake of art, the option of the artist to participate, which I can't imagine any artist will say no, but who knows? Some people may have a stance against it, and we'll see what that shakes out. And then most importantly, fair compensation, new royalty types. Those are the things we're really looking for as royalty investors. So those are the positives. Drawbacks, the opt-in requirement and what that could lead to. Ultimately, the fear is the frailty and quality, which could incentivize these AI generative companies to go less reputable routes for training their models and breaking the law or finding loopholes, whatever you might call it. But basically circumventing the frameworks that are trying to be built and put into place. Um, Obviously, that's bad for everybody, except for those AI systems, because they're at least saving money theoretically, but that's a possible drawback. Um, the tracking and attributing of credit in AI systems. This is one that I think is going to require a lot of focus. Um, I don't know about you all, but in my experience working with AI systems, I do find AI hallucinations to be not rampant, but common. And that can certainly happen with an AI system tracking another AI system. That's specifically false positives, which can lead to, disputes, things like that. Disputes hold everything up for everybody, bad for everybody, but they do happen. And if you have AI systems hallucinating any kind of tracking or crediting, it can create a mess that's going to be difficult to see through. So that's the tech maturity I put, or immaturity, because yeah, it's young and it will require work. And then the costs, obviously, additional compliance, reporting, auditing, um, all going to add to costs. We'll see how it translates to revenue and things like that. It should be outside of it, but obviously that leads to incentives for AI generative companies and things like that. So yeah, something to keep an eye on too. Um, Now that's also kind of a positive. One thing that we as royalty investors always want is better reporting, better auditing, better data, which we have seen a lot of improvement of over the last, 5-ish years as more money is poured into the space. So maybe this could be a catalyst for that. We'll have to see. Again, we're still so early on in all this, it's kind of hard to speculate. But these are kind of the signs that we're seeing and things that we want to keep a close eye on, especially as the AI systems ramp up and will require more content to feed them, to train them, stuff like that. Um, so those are the big ones. Um, Things to watch. EU AI, obviously, with the latest with Gemma and what STIM's doing. The U.S. Copyright Office guidelines. Obviously, a couple of years ago, we talked a lot about the CRB and the rate increase. There will likely be a big conversation around AI as that next meeting comes, which I think is in 2027. Rob, remind me if I'm wrong there. 2027 for the next CRB meeting?
I think that's right.
Yeah, so that will be something to watch too. Um, AI licensing, how widely it gets adopted, what does the compensation look like, of course, and then the tracking, like we were just talking about, the effective attribution, fraud prevention, etc. So a lot of big things. We'll be keeping another close eye on it going into 2026, because obviously it's going to be very top of mind. These are the things we'll be keeping a close eye on. I would encourage you all to keep an eye on it too. If you see things that you think are interesting, send them to me. I had a bunch of people reach out to me in the last quarter about AI, asking like, "Hey, like, have you guys done any AI studies? What are you seeing?" So I thought it was important to talk about it on one of these webinars. Um, but yeah, if you guys see stuff, I'd love to hear about it, have a conversation about it. We'll be keeping a close eye on it too, and we'll likely do a few more reports on AI updates next year. Um, so that's pretty much my whole spiel for AI. Next, we'll get into the submitted questions here, run through the stuff that you guys sent in. If you have questions about anything we discussed there, use the Q&A option. Anything else you want to chat about, please use the Q&A option. We'll run through these quickly here. We got about 30 or 40, which is pretty standard. Um, yeah, we'll get through them quick. Don't want to hold everyone too late this morning, but yeah, a lot to think about. Okay, without further ado here, how does one get started? What are good criteria for small investments? A sort of an easy way to dip your toe. Well, getting started, you got to get verified, obviously. It's because we need you to understand the rules of the platform, which are pretty firm. Um, as far as dipping your toe in small investments, every asset on the site has to get purchased in its entirety. So you'll probably be looking for smaller priced assets. You can search by pricing through our exchange. The system's designed for that because we really focus on the financials. Um, so that would be the best way. And then just be active. Don't overextend yourself. Just because, if you get a confirmed purchase, you're on the hook for that. Um, so yeah, don't overextend. Find something you like, make offers, be active, and that's really the best way to go about it. Um, Most common way to get into investing in royalties, yeah, same answer. Being active, finding something you like and buying it. It's really the best way. Um, Make sure you understand what you're buying too. Read. We've got our ultimate guide to buying royalties, which is a great resource. Obviously, someone at Royalty Exchange can help you too if you wanted to reach out and have a conversation about a specific asset, something like that. We're very accessible. So that's always an option too. Best way to evaluate royalties to invest in as someone starting out, is it best to start with fixed term or a lifetime? That's really up to you. I wouldn't say one is best. They satisfy different parts of a portfolio and diversification strategies. And then obviously, like what you like too. We can't really ignore the taste aspect. Most people buy stuff that they like, which makes perfect sense. Best way to evaluate royalties, that's kind of the million-dollar question. I would say take a read through some of our long form theses that we put out. That can kind of give you a good idea of how we look at this stuff, what to look at. Um, they're pretty in depth. It's probably my best suggestion. Then obviously our ultimate guide to buying royalties too, which again is free to download. That's pretty comprehensive, gets into a lot of stuff. How are the royalties paid out? Via Royalty Exchange. We act as the admin for all this stuff to make it easy for you guys. So once you buy something, we set you up in our admin portal and we just send the royalties to whatever account you specify whenever they come in. We do hold a 30-day window to turn this stuff around, just in cases when we get huge influxes of royalties. Sometimes it takes time to process, but we're normally pretty quick. Our average processing time, I think it actually just dipped below 10 days on average. Um, so we're pretty quick, but yeah,
Yeah, and
depending
just to
on.
clarify that, John, the
Mhm.
royalties will always be paid initially by the company, the publisher, the label,
Mhm.
whoever the actual distributor of the royalties has always been. They'll continue to be the responsible for collecting the royalties. They pay them the royalty exchange, and like you said, we then pass them through to the investor.
Right. Perfect. Next one here. Can I get scammed by a listing? Not really. Um, we're pretty transparent about everything. We put all the information we have available on every listing. Um, the seller doesn't really have an option or any control over the data that you see on a listing, and we vet it pretty extensively. So nothing goes up that's, in conflict or, has an open lien. Sellers go through background checks. So it's pretty extensive. Um, I would just say make sure you read through the listing. Make sure you understand what you're buying. You don't want to be paying a life of rights multiple on a limited 10-year deal that's only got 2 years left, like, but that should be all on the listing. So it's totally on you. Um, but as far as getting scammed, not really. Understand the risks, understand what you're buying, um, but all that information should be available to you.
Yeah, and just to kind of tie a bow on the diligence part is if you see a listing on Royalty Exchange, that means that has already passed a check. Basically, what we say we do is we confirm that the seller is who they say they are, that they own what they say they own, and they have the ability to sell it. So what that is like John mentioned, we'll first do a background check on the seller. We'll always connect directly with whoever their royalty distributor is to confirm that their account is in good standing, payable, no issues. If there are, then all of those would have had to have been addressed at closing, or else the listing isn't able to go up on the site. So there is a vetting process before a listing gets actually put on the marketplace.
Yep. And we got a submitted question here, a three-parter. One, could you clarify whether sellers determine when a listing moves into the accepting final offer stage? Is that similar to a reserve met condition on their side? It is similar to that. Um, so the final offers stage was something we implemented this year because we were getting a lot of feedback from buyers saying, "Oh, I missed my opportunity to buy here because I was traveling, I was asleep, I was whatever. I would have paid more for this. Can I buy it from them? Like, what can I do?" Um, so this was our way of opening up that opportunity for people who might have lost opportunities that they wanted. So it's kind of like a last call for offers. It does help the sellers too, because obviously, like they can push up price a little bit at the end, but it was built for investors to keep opportunities open and ensure, whoever wanted it the most got it was really, really the motivation there. So it does kind of act as a reserve met because the seller is on the hook on that first accepted price. If it doesn't go up at all, like, yeah, you accepted this price. Um, so in a way, it's like that. Um, Part two, with a paid membership, do certain listings become available to members before they're available to the general public? Good question. No. Everyone has the same fair shot. What the membership does afford you is it lets you participate in that final offer stage, regardless of whether or not you participated in the listing. So the final offer step, you can only participate there if you're actively offered on a listing. If you just sat by and decided I'm going to snipe this last second, you do not have that option. You have to have been an active participant. All access members can participate in that final step um, for any listing. So it's part of the perks there. Um, but sniping, like I was just mentioning, is also not really a thing because any offer made in the last 5 minutes extends the clock. So it's kind of built into our system from when we were doing auctions. Um, but yeah, so that's how that functions together. Part three, are there additional risks associated with purchasing royalties from international distributors such as PRS compared to domestic ones like BMI, aside from exchange rate fluctuations? I wouldn't say additional risks exactly. Um, the biggest considerations are yeah, exchange rate, um, and then also clarity of data. A lot of international reporting is not as transparent as US based. It's getting better, but it still is relatively limited in some capacities. You mentioned PRS specifically. We work with them a lot. They just recently changed their distribution system, which kind of makes their data a little bit difficult to read. Um, so historically, they were paying out on a quarterly basis, and just I think as of March this year, they implemented a monthly cycle as well as a quarterly cycle. So basically, they have this branch, I believe it's called MCPS or something like that, that collects digital distribution royalties, and then that pays out monthly. So every month there's something small, and then every quarter there's a big portion. So we've had to kind of update our statement reading system, which is how we translate things to listings, to present that And so sometimes PRS assets can look a little lumpy in the earnings because you'll have, quarterly that's consistent, and then you'll have, $100 payment in 1 month, and then a zero, and then a 150, and then, a 3,000 for the quarterly. Um, so that's really for PRS specifically. Risks beyond that, yeah, not too much. Rob, do you have anything that you can think of for international risks?
I would no, like you said, probably more of a consideration, just depending on where you're domiciled. There may be some tax implications
Yep,
of foreign
that's true.
source royalties.
Yep, that's a good point. But definitely talk to your tax advisor about that. We are not tax advisors, so we can't speak to that. Okay, cool. Good questions. Next one here. What is the typical cash flow multiple? Is it a good deal for the seller and buyer? Um, Typical cash flow multiples. So we see different cash flow levels depending on the structure of the asset, the age of the asset, the caliber of the artists, um, the breadth of the asset. By that I mean like how diversified is it inherently of artists included and tracks. All of those things can lead to fluctuations in multiples. The biggest driver is probably the age. About every 6 months or so, we do an audit on average purchase multiples by age, asset type, etc. That does go to our all access members as part of the perks of that membership is you get access to these deeper analyses like market health, for example. So some of you I see are all access members, so you guys would have seen that. Do a big spreadsheet by dollar age cohort. Um, so typical, I mean, for life of rights, anywhere from 6 to 15x, depending on it, on the caliber of it, because your horizon to earn is so long. It's not really a typical. It'd be by age. Rob, you want to add anything to that?
Nope, I think you got it.
Okay. Next one here. Looking for the confidence to take my first plunge into royalty investing. Interested in the effect of long-term inflation. That is a good question. Long-term inflation should not have a very material impact on royalties because of companies like the CRB, which will look at the state of royalties, the cost of money, things like that, and update royalty rates in hand. I believe with the last ruling, there's actually an inflation hedge built in. Um, but they re-examine it every 5 years, so it should automatically kind of keep up. Um, Especially since, streaming, for example, streaming royalties are streaming mechanical, I should say, are paid out based on a percentage of revenue from streaming services. And since they would presumably be updating their prices, therefore their revenue in hand with inflation, it should kind of match that. Um, yeah, so you should be fine there. As far as taking your first plunge, shoot me an email. Let's hop on a call. We can talk through a specific asset, make sure you have all your questions answered, really instill confidence that you know what you're doing, getting into. So yeah, reach out. Let's get you started. We can definitely help with that. Is AI able to make a very high quality songs? Would old royalties still remain of value? That remains to be seen. Presumably, yes. AI will be able to help develop very high quality music. We'll see how it goes. Will old royalties still remain valuable? In our experience, yeah. Those should be some of the most valuable. Um, People don't very dramatically change their music tastes as they grow. I don't know about you all, but I mean, I still listen to songs I listened to when I was 15 years old. Maybe not at the same frequency, but I still listen to them. I listen to new music too, but it just widens my repertoire of listening rather than siloing it. And we see that pretty consistently across all music. And the older a song gets, normally the more uh, consistent the earnings get, the less volatile because people have that kind of indoctrinated listenership, um, especially with things like, decade radio. or genre radio, or something's established in its genre or its place in history, it may get regular plays via satellite radio for 90s music or whatever, right? Um, so older stuff does tend to hold its value better, um, which is why, speaking back to that earlier question about purchase multiples, the age matters so much because it is a marker for consistency. Um, anything from you, Rob, on that?
Yeah, I think really the way that I think about it is it's kind of another technology that makes, it way easier to create pieces of music and get them out there, similar to, you know, digital like GarageBand type tools that, happened before AI. It was and then DIY distribution services like CD Baby and TuneCore. Like over time, technology has always made it easier for music to get out there, and it's probably harder to get seen, as it turned from, all right, you need to have your song on the radio to get seen. Well, now there's other new technologies where, hey, if your song gets big on TikTok, that's a whole new platform, right? So there's more opportunities for your music to seen, but there's also way more music to compete with now. And I think AI is probably just going to be another step in that same direction. It's really kind of been the way that technology has affected creation of and distribution of music over, ever since the beginning of time. Um, so that's the way I kind of see it. It's just more of uh, uh, a platform, more of a marketplace, more music that's out there, and you just have to um, determine whether it's more of a battle to get your song in front of people than it and it's hard to say whether that's different now than it was, when you had to have a label that went around and made sure radio stations played your music, things like that. It's like it's a wide open territory. We don't really know how it's going to go, but I can certainly foresee that there's just going to be more music in the marketplace, and the stuff that folks want to listen to is going to win out one way or the other.
Yeah. And to that point, speaking to age, people, as they adopt new platforms, are going to be looking for the music that they like, which again adds value to the older stuff. Um, so yeah, it does work hand in hand that way too. Submitted question here. For portfolios with many titles, is there a good way to differentiate between growth/decline from existing titles and growth/decline from new titles? For example, many portfolios will show a great cager, but that's largely due to more titles being added over the history of the portfolio. What's the best way to isolate that variable? That is a great question. Dollar age is probably the best way to do it. Um, By that, when looking at the raw data, you'll want to look at earnings by track, which can be a bit overwhelming. So maybe you want to isolate it to your top 10, top 15, top 20 earners. And then we weight the age of the catalog against the size of the contribution to the earnings. That's how we generate our dollar rate for the whole catalog. But that's what you'll want to look at, and then maybe even build a growth or decline model by track. It might be a bit of work, but that's probably the best way to do it. And then you can kind of quantify your risk profile a bit more specifically. Because yeah, the cager on a whole is nice as far as like, okay, is this interesting to look at? But yeah, looking at the per title trends is super important too. We do try to isolate that a bit on our listings, but we keep it pretty summary, and you can get way more in depth with it on your own with the raw data. Um, so that first and foremost. Um, Next thing that you'll want to look at is source and determining the staying power of the source of the earnings. By that we mean things like TikTok versus, Spotify streaming versus like played in a commercial, etc. So a combination of those is going to be your best bet. But you should have all the information you need to isolate the earnings by track and age by looking at the full life of earnings of the catalog. You should have all that information. Um, I hope that's helpful. If you want more clarity, let us know. We can talk about it a bit more. Um, but yeah, so let us know. Okay, next one here, another good question. Have you seen Spotify's bundling packages with audiobooks lead to a decrease in royalties received across the platform? I don't know that I have noticed too much, um, but it's kind of hard to divine that. I guess it would be looking at concentration of Spotify earnings on the whole year over year would be the best way to do that, but I have not noticed. Catalogs that are consistent have remained largely consistent as I've seen it. Um, I don't know, Rob, have you noticed anything? I mean, I haven't, but
No, no, I don't know.
yeah, the only thing is it's just kind of hard to determine, right? Because it's not like Spotify exactly tells us, how that all gets calculated out. I guess we see like premium payments versus ad driven payments. Um, but even that, is limited clarity. Um, that will probably be something we can answer better in another year when we have like, okay, here's 3 years of Spotify data pre-bundling, and here's a year to 2 years of data post-bundling, and then compare levels that way. But given how many factors we'll have to consider, I think we kind of take it with a grain of salt analysis. Um, That's what I suspect. We'll see though. Might be interesting to look at that for an all access piece at some point and really, really dig into it. Uh, Next one here. I'm a current investor in the platform, not just specific royalties. How will this affect my investment? Um, Presumably, that's talking about how AI will impact your investment in royalty exchange as the platform. In which case, I would say positively, because we can use AI tools to make things better. Um, but I don't really know. Rob, do you have anything?
Nope.
Yeah, it's a tough one to answer. Uh, what are the minimum and maximum investments? Minimum, whatever price you can find for a small asset. I like to say on the low end, catalogs will transact in like the $5,000 range. Rough math, assume you're paying some multiple on the cash flow. We need to see some level of cash flow to consider an asset. Right now, it's like between 2 and 5K and royalties earned in the last 12 months. So some multiple of that, you're already looking at 5K right there. You could maybe find a resale asset that has declined for less than that, but be tough. Um, 5 to 10K is really the low end. As far as maximum, uh, let's see, the largest on-platform catalog we've sold was like 6 million, 6.5 million. So that and above. Kind of depends what's available. Uh, what kind of returns can I expect and when do they pay out? So we'll start with the easy part of the question, frequency. Payment frequency depends on the catalog you buy. We'll pay out as we receive royalties. Most will pay on a quarterly basis, so expect quarterly. But every listing should have that information for you. You can see on our payments by period chart the frequency, so you can always get that information on any listing. That will give you kind of what to expect if you were to buy it. Now, as far as returns, our median return right now for life of rights catalogs, I think is around 12.5%. The site says around 13, but I think as of the last, it's like 12.6%, if I'm remembering correctly. Um, but it entirely depends on the price you pay and how the catalog performs. We don't have a crystal ball, so we can't really answer that accurately. Um, that's the average right now. Um, so yeah, take that as you will. Do you believe AI will impact supply and demand of music? Supply, undoubtedly. Demand, less likely. Um, we kind of talked about it already, but AI is going to enable a lot more creation, um, for better or worse. Um, I guess it will impact demand too because it will. help people discover more music. Um, that's really all I can really point to, though. Well, Rob, thoughts?
Yep, just like we said before, you know,
Yeah. Follow up here from Liam. Since royalty payments are made in arrears, are there tools that reliably track leading indicators like stream counts? I've seen a few, but it's hard to tell how accurate they are. Assuming you had a reliable barometer for stream count, how closely would you expect that to project what actually happens with royalty payments, and what would the lag period be? Another good question, hard to answer. Um, you could look at streaming numbers to give you a rough sense, but like we were talking about, since it's based on revenue of the platform that translates to the royalty, it's not exactly a one for one system. So it's not like one stream equals one penny, right? Um, so yeah, stream counts are a leading indicator, certainly. Um, but it's going to be an imperfect system. It might give you a rough idea of how well it's doing based on how it's performing now versus historically. Um, but that's probably the best. Chartmetric's pretty good if you're looking for one. As far as how accurate they are, it's anyone's guess. I can't really speak to that. Um, Whenever I look at that stuff, I do try to take it with a grain of salt too, because like I've seen stuff on Chartmetric that was like, oh, it's only playing on two radio channels and one satellite radio channel, but the royalty data is like half from satellite radio. So I always take it with a grain of salt. Um, but yeah, it can be helpful, but definitely don't lean on it. Um, Yeah. Now the lag period, that depends on actually the royalty payor and how they work. Like take ASCAP and BMI, for example. Two performance rights organizations in the United States. They pay out on the same roughly scheduled quarterly. But the way that they present their data, BMI presents it based on when the royalties are earned rather than paid, and ASCAP pays out or reports them based on when they're paid rather than earned. So BMI, their data presents a 2-quarter delay because of how the reporting works, whereas ASCAP, it presents as a 1-quarter delay, but it's the same pay periods. Um, and then, take Sony, for example, they pay on a biannual basis. So you're looking at then a 6-month minimum lag, just because of their payment schedule, right? So as it translates from streaming services to digital distribution companies like TuneCore, CD Baby. I think the lag period is less, um, but I'm not sure exactly what time frame. I would use PRO data. That's pretty robust and specific. Um, and that, yeah, that's going to be at least a quarter delay, at least. Um, yeah, Rob, anything you want to add to that?
nope.
Okay. And then how would AI systems reduce music creators' income? Is this because artists would usually pay songwriters would now use AI to write songs for them, or is it simply because AI generated music will take up market share away from originally created music? Probably a bit of both, honestly. We look at it as royalty income rather than like, oh, creators being paid for creating music. So we would look at it as a market share thing. We don't include AI music on our platform. Um, So yeah, it'd just be a consideration of market share, really. Um, but
And
yeah.
and depending on how the courts come out with it, but some early indications that they're saying that, if an AI creates, a picture or something else, it cannot be copyrighted. So if it can't be copyrighted, then there would not be a royalty license to give out, and thus no royalties paid. So it's possible that is kind of where this goes a little bit, depending on, the extent to which humans are involved in creating it.
Mhm.
If it's straight up a computer, then maybe it's not copyrightable, and thus no royalties would be paid. So then it's kind of an incentive thing. Like, do you want to put this out there if you can't monetize it?
Yep. Okay, next one here. How will intellectual property crypto projects like Story Protocol help to enforce music rights ownership going forward? I'm not familiar with Story Protocol. It looks like it's an AI infrastructure for intellectual property logged in blockchain.
Right, right. Yeah, so it's really, I think the question is getting at can and this has been in my mind something that is a really untapped uh, possibility for the music industry because what you could do is you could create a song and say, hey, these five people created it, they each are entitled to this percentage of royalties, and kind of operate on smart contracts. And if it's public information. It seems like, and this I've been thinking this for almost 10 years now. It's a great way to codify like who owns what and who participated in what. I think the issue it has always been and probably will always be is just buy-in. Like you need a large amount of folks to buy in to get this stuff onto a blockchain. It hasn't happened yet. Still could happen. But I certainly think that that's a prime use case for blockchain and IP rights, just to determine like who owns this and um, make more transparency around where these royalties are coming from, who's getting the licenses,
Mhm.
who owns it, and ultimately tracking, once transactions happen and someone sells their rights, who the current holder is as well. So I I love the implications. I think in practice, it takes so many different players to buy in that's why it hasn't happened yet in my mind.
Yeah. And to be fair, the music ecosystem at large is a glacially moving system. Um, they have always been slow to implement changes. I mean, we saw it with the shift to digital even took forever. Um, and all history too. I mean, going from cassette to CD to digital, like the download to digital, like it's all always slow. So not a huge surprise there, but yeah. So we'll see. Next one here. What are the implications using AI regarding copyright infringement? Kind of talked about that already, and it seems that consequences are coming through as of this morning with Gemma. Um,
Yeah, there's a
yeah,
couple
so
different avenues where infringement you think would come into play. Like you mentioned, is using lyrics, using melodies, using recordings without a license to train a model. So that could be one type of infringement, where it's not, you're not necessarily like taking a single song and ripping it off, but if you're using large blocks of data to use it without a license, that could be one infringement. And then the other one would be, just basically telling your AI, say, hey, create me a song that sounds like Taylor Swift, and if that's the case, then that's kind of a more of a direct infringing type thing where obviously in order for the AI program to create the song, they would have had to have trained it on a Taylor Swift, song. So I think there's a couple of different ways. It's like kind of the large data infringement that you mentioned earlier, but then also kind of a direct one for one song or artist or name and likeness kind of thing
hmm,
infringement that could come down by you trying to put out a song that is substantially is pretty much exactly like something that's already out there.
cool. Moving swiftly on. How has the current economy climate affected royalties? Yeah, this is a big one. Um, Not really, as far as royalty payouts go. One of the best aspects of royalties as an investment vehicle is its insulation from traditional markets. So it acts as a great hedge, that a great cash yielding hedge. Um, People don't stop listening to music just because times are hard. And that's something we've kind of seen historically. Um, so it hasn't really. What we have seen is if people are struggling externally, sometimes they are more or less motivated to buy or sell on the site. Um, so we sometimes see it a bit in traffic. Um, Now you could view that as opportunity because sellers may be more desperate to sell, so you can maybe get more favorable multiples. You could also see it as a drawback if more people are looking to buy in, it could increase competition. So a lot of different ways you could view it. But as far as royalty performance, not so much an impact. Um, Anything to add, Rob?
No, I don't think it covers it.
Cool. Next thing here, similar to what we are just talking about, are you moving towards tokenizing with smart contracts, songs, and putting on the blockchain and exchanges? Nope, we are not. Um, yeah, we're not. Rob, thoughts? More?
No plans at the moment.
Cool. Can you say whether royalty exchange listed assets are sold for higher than the average price in the sector? I would say we are setting the average because we are an open marketplace. Um, Outside of royalty exchange, I think that you find massive multiple inflation, especially if you look at fractionalized purchase opportunities, because I mean, from the math I've done, the price per share, while a lower dollar point value, is a lesser return value. Um, and then from the institutional level, typically since they're spending, hundreds of millions of dollars in buying super grade A, top tier intellectual property, they tend to command higher multiples because the assets are, the best you can buy, right? Um, to that point, we do track a median sale price, so you can kind of gauge where relative to the average or median a catalog is listed. Um, I always tell people, take the median with a grain of salt. It is a good starting point, but the intrinsic value of a cash flow that we're showing could be higher or lower than that, depending on the factors at large. Um, which is why, to the question earlier about the data, using the raw data that we have to really do your analysis, like that is critical, in my opinion. It's also why we provide so many resources around how to view this stuff through the Ultimate Guide, etc. Um, so yeah, all in all, I would say that we're actually setting the average. Um, it's my opinion, but Rob?
Agreed.
Cool. Quick question here. What is dollar age? Sorry, you went over this. I just got on. No problem. Dollar age is our weighted metric to help determine the weighted age of songs in the catalog contributing to the revenue. So we've got a couple walkthroughs on it. I can send you the link directly, but yeah, it's basically how we determine the average age of the catalog and the songs contributing to the revenue. It's um it's one of our markers for volatility in how old the catalog is. So it's super helpful metric.
Yeah, if you Google dollar age, it should pop up as one of the probably the top
Okay, great. Yeah, if you're
result.
having trouble finding it buried, shoot me a note. I can get it sent over to you in a sec, along with the ultimate guide too, which gets into the specifics of it. So that should be pretty helpful. Next one here. In your opinion, I'm curious if there are any recent deals in the exchange that transacted quite a bit below what you thought it was worth or quite a bit above. Huh. Let me look.
Yeah, I think in general, a good way to look at it is if you look at the marketplace median. It's kind of a
Yeah.
blunt tool that we use that compares assets and purchase prices across the whole marketplace. So I think comparing those two numbers would probably get you an answer to that. Um, if something transacted lower than the marketplace median, then there's probably a reason for it. Um, and likewise the opposite. Typically, I think longer established catalogs with older dollar ages typically go for a higher multiple than the median might indicate.
Yeah.
Um,
There are two, I think, that sold for far below what their intrinsic value was. For any of you that are curious, you want to go to the past deals. This is specifically listing ID 6398 and 6410. They were the songwriting and publishing portions for Cherish, Acraze, Danny Lee, and a bunch of other R&B artists. Um, they sold for a 6 times multiple and a 4.8 times multiple on last 12 months revenue, respectively. Um, yeah, I think those were super value deals. I think they could have got much higher, especially because one of them's like a almost 13-year dollar age. Now it's a bit difficult to evaluate these ones because they did benefit from a newer release, but it did point to the older releases and did help increase those streams as well. So it was a bit more of a complicated of catalog to evaluate and a higher dollar value too. These ones sold for about 500,000 each. Um, but yeah, I think those were pretty well good value buys. Those. Yeah, I won't stay on this topic too long, but those I think. Okay, let's get back to our questions. Here we go. What's the best way to put a proper valuation on large catalogs to have a mix of royalty streams with a short shelf life? Yeah, I mean, determine what your shelf life is that you're working with, um, which can be difficult. But that's really the answer to the question, right? Um, because the shelf life is going to determine your tail end of royalty earnings, which is really going to be your true move forward value as far as any NPV calculation you might do might be. Um, so depending on how large the mix is, right? You could feasibly determine a discounted risk profile, right? Like say you have 30% of the catalog coming from consistent streaming for 30 years, and then, 60% of the catalog's coming from newer tracks that are streaming, and then 10% is, you know, a TikTok viral hit, right? Um, well, obviously you'll want to quantify the decay rate you see from each of those sources differently. Um, but it all is going to come down to the sources and how the revenue is generated. So that I think is going to be your key there. Look at the sources, it'll answer your questions. The age will also contribute, but the sources more so as far as determining shelf life. Next here, is there a menu of sync prices? Not really. Any kind of sync license is negotiated between the publisher and whoever is seeking the license. So it's not really something we see. You as an owner would benefit from any kind of a sync payment that flowed through if it was included in the catalog you bought, but it's not really transparency and visibility into that. Um, and then, any sync placement adds exposure to a catalog too. So there is a residual royalty that comes through. Um, but again, it's anyone's guess. Just consider it upside, if anything. How do y'all think AI will impact the rights management business from record labels to publishers? I think it will ultimately help, um, just because they're going to use AI tools to help track this stuff and they can move quickly, but it's tough to guess. I don't know, Rob, what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think they'll be just as busy creating tools that helps their business as they will, protecting their existing interests.
Mhm.
If an AI can create a song that sounds like your song, then you should probably have your own tools that help you identify songs that sound like your songs and determine, where their proper licenses granted for those things. So I think, it's a tool that um, any rights holder should be taken advantage of as well.
Yeah, should help largely. Why do you never sell cheaper catalogs? Must be a bigger market. Yeah, there are millions and millions of artists who generate small sums of royalties. Um, One thing to consider with royalties is that the amount earned is directly reflective of the consumption. So if you have a catalog of songs that's earning pennies, that would be considered an extremely high risk catalog because it's probably not going to earn much more because there isn't an audience for it. It could, but that kind of speculative investment is not something that we offer. Um, Not to mention there just isn't going to be much data. So running an analysis would be tremendously difficult. Um, so a combination of those reasons is why um, we want to sell legitimate assets. So they need to have a proven history of earnings, and that ultimately translates to price point. So it's kind of unavoidable. Um, the only way around that is to offer fractionalized ownership, which dramatically changes the offering, which is one of the reasons why not.
Yeah, and it costs royalty exchange time and money and effort to get a market onto the platform, and at some point, there needs to be, it needs to be worth our while to make sure that an asset is viable to get on the platform. So, something that earns, $100 a year just isn't worth it to go through the effort of facilitating that transaction.
Mhm. Right. Right, that's right, because there are assignment costs. Like BMI charges $1,000 for a royalty assignment, right? And that has to get covered. Um, yep. So yeah, lots of reasons. Submitted question here. The appearance of training data royalty seems pretty amazing or increase of value for rights holders. Could this revenue potentially actually increase the market for publishers and songwriters and make it so that now old music royalties become even more profitable than ever before? Yes, absolutely. Um, However, grain of salt, we don't know what shape it's all going to take. It's a very exciting prospect. Um, New royalty streams are something we're always looking for, especially for existing catalogs. If that's something that starts flowing through, it's rising tide lifts all boats, right? Um, so yeah, the potential is really exciting, but it ultimately will come down to these rights that get set and the rates and how that all shakes out. So we'll see. Sorry, one more question here. What right dollar size catalog would you build to sell and monetize down the road? Is 10 million to 20 million? You could absolutely do that. You could absolutely do that. Lots of people will do that, in fact. Um, there isn't really a right size. It's kind of up to you. If you have a fund, that raised $20 million, then yeah, use your $20 million, deploy it. It's going to make money. If you're an individual and you're looking to just, build a diversified portion of your existing portfolio, you could do it with far less if you wanted to. So yeah, ultimately, it comes down to you and what you want to do. If you're looking to deploy $10 million, let's hop on a call. Because then talking strategy is going to be something that you'll want to do. Um, and we might be able to help you with some of that. But if you're just looking to like dip your toe in and get started, we can still do a call, honestly, if you wanted to do that. But yeah, there isn't really a right dollar size. What we see more so is that uh, the number of participants in potential buyers compared to the entry point of a catalog can vary dramatically. And the higher the price you go, the less competition, therefore, the more favorable multiple you can get. So you can tend to do more favorable multiples the higher dollar point you go. Um, so in that, deploying 10 to 20 million, you can get really favorable multiples, assuming they appreciate with the age of the catalogs and compared to the multiple you get, then offloading that to a larger institution like a pension fund or a bank or something like that. Say your average cost, multiple cost is like a 6x, then you sell for a 10x the entire catalog. I mean, that's a pretty nice appreciation, plus the royalties collected along the way, right? Um, so yeah, kind of a long-winded way of saying it depends on your strategy and your comfortable deployment um, and what you're trying to do. So I hope that helps. One more here. As you've noticed, many people were asking questions about best way to get started, how to evaluate um, best deals, and you guys have done a great job putting out a lot of free content on your blog. But I think what would also be very useful for current and future investors would be some sort of group chat or Discord where new investors could talk with more experienced investors and multiple people can pool in their money to make deals. So this already exists. P.S. I'd be willing to monitor the community and keep everything active and engaging if you all need someone to manage it. While an interesting idea, we don't have anything like that right now. Uh, Several people have approached me about doing like an in-person event. Um, But something to consider also is that that's your competition you're talking to, um, as far as acquisition goes. So for us to curate something like that, while interesting, it does open a lot of doors, and create a lot of potential conflicts. Um, so maybe we'll do it in person one day. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Uh, Next one here. As a passive investment, can you think of any actions that royalty owners can take to drive growth, or is the outcome entirely out of the owner's control? Largely, it's out of your control. Um, I have heard of lots of creative thoughts from people, um, as far as, building their own playlists and promoting the playlists of catalogs they've purchased to kind of help drive streams. Um, there was one guy I spoke to who owned a bunch of nightclubs in Europe, and his strategy was to buy popular nightclub songs and then play him at his clubs. Um, so like, hey, like you can try. I think it might be difficult to really move the needle. And since you don't control copyrights, you don't have a say in licensing or anything like that. You don't have a direct say. I mean, maybe if you know some, you know, uh, people who work in the film industry who handle music placements, you could try and convince them to use a song that you are earning on, but I think it's kind of a stretch. Um, it's largely out of your hands. Next, is Royalty Exchange a trusted company? Yes, we are the most trusted marketplace in the world for royalties. Do songwriters sell their royalties to Royalty Exchange without selling the copyright to Recognition Music Group? I'm not familiar with what Recognition Music Group is, and Royalty Exchange does not buy royalties.
Yeah, the
Um,
Recognition is the company that manages the old Hypnosis compositions.
oh,
So yeah, we're not affiliated at all. No, so really what is assigned at Royalty Exchange is the rights to royalty income. Copyrights reside with either the publisher or label, who are staked with managing the actual licensing efforts on that end.
next one is the music royalty claim rights transfer market handled by Royalty Exchange, currently in a growth phase, or has it reached maturity or decline phase? Somewhere between growth and maturity. Um, we've been around a long time doing this. Rob and I actually we were just talking about how long we've been doing this before this call started. Um, but we are still growing. More people are learning that you can buy royalties. I mean, it always surprises me how many conversations I have with people that say, like, I didn't even know you could do that as far as buying royalties. Um, so to that, still growth. More people adopting, understanding, participating. Um, yeah. So that's my opinion. I don't know, Rob, if you have any other thoughts, but
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's changed markedly over the last almost 10 years, where deals happened every now and then, but they're always behind closed doors. Now you're seeing a lot of like Royalty Exchange created a public marketplace, and you're seeing a lot of other types of companies that do not exactly the same things, similar things. Certainly more investment funds have gotten into the business over the last few years. I think it's becoming the the volume and dollar amount of transactions, I think, has absolutely been growing, along in Royalty Exchange Marketplace as well, has seen the same thing. And I think neither has really scratched the surface of what this could be in the the entire music, landscape. The industry is multi-billions of dollars every year, and even the royalty deals that happen with us or privately, I don't think even scratch the surface of that total amount.
Yep, completely agree. Submitted question here. Do you get to depreciate your purchase price over a period of time? Yeah, there's definitely depreciation methods you can do. We point to a 10-year amortization schedule. I think we have a snippet in our FAQ on the tax codes and way to do that. Um, can also send you that, Barry, if you want. But yeah, there's definitely depreciation you can do. Okay, next one here. From the perspective of record labels and music publishers, how is royalty exchange perceived? That's a good question. The word I would use is ambivalent. Um, Initially, publishers and labels were super resistant to private institutional buyers. Um, there was a lot of friction. Publishers did not want to sell or change their ways, and there was a huge demand for data, transparency, fast action, things like that. And there were so many funds that were participating. This I'm talking about back in the hypnosis days, right? Um, so initially, we face that same resistance because these companies are like, why is everyone asking for us to change our admin practices, whatever, whatever, whatever. Since then, I think the perspective towards royalty exchange has improved because we simplify those requests for these larger institutions. We follow their protocols and their systems. We become a single administration point rather than, fractionalizing a bunch of against a bunch of different individual payees. Um, so we simplify it a lot. That being said, the royalty collection on properties that are managed by a label and a publisher is part of their revenue model. Um, so in plenty of cases, they're resistant to um, going through the assignment because they don't want to part with the revenue. They want to keep it under their umbrella. Um, so today, I think we are just viewed as another system in the space, not so much as a negative or positive thing, or just as a thing. Um, that's my perspective. Rob, curious to hear what you have to say. Rob deals a lot more directly with publishers and labels, so his word's going to be kind of gospel here, in my opinion.
Well, I mean, ultimately, the question is how are we perceived? And I guess you'd have to ask the individual labels and publishers. But I can say that over the last almost 10 years, we've worked extremely hard at building relationships with folks at each one of these companies and doing right by them. Making sure we're operating within their guidelines, parameters, contracts. I like to think we are considered at least a good actor. They I hope that they wouldn't see us as anything other than that. But ultimately, when we're asking them to make changes and assignments, like we're creating work for them, so we recognize that, and we try to make things as easy as possible on them as well. So, it's been a long road from when we first started, where the overarching sentiment was never sell your royalties, and some payors would not even allow it, to this is something that their clients want. And we're seen as a, I would think, as a transparent marketplace for folks to sell royalties, where they feel comfortable that they are getting the best deal possible. And I think that is probably a sentiment, and certainly amongst a few labels and publishers, if not all. We also sometimes can be seen as a way for a company's clients to go out and get an advance that maybe the company is not willing to give them. So we're kind of an alternate source of revenue there as well. Um, and then, like you said, the one point of contact, I think we try to to make sure that we're handling things with the distributors directly, so that they're not inundated with a bunch of questions, and we want to be the customer service arm really for all those deals. So yeah, I mean, I guess our hope is that we're viewed well. We've worked really hard at trying um, to be a positive influence on the market, and that's what we'll always continue to do.
Cool. Then submitted question here, which Rob, this one's gonna be for you. Correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is that Royalty Exchange technically holds the title to the royalties and distributes payments to the investor. If this is the case, what would happen to legal ownership of a royalty stream in the unlikely event of Royalty Exchange going out of business?
Yeah, good question. I guess a point of clarification is there's not really a title for royalties. It's really all based on contract. And so ultimately, the contract will be with the royalty seller and the purchaser. So that's the purchase agreement that happens on the marketplace. So that's the controlling document as far as who owns this royalty stream. So it will always be in the investor's hands. Now, as administrator, Royalty Exchange collects those payments from the payor and pays them to the investor. So we're kind of the administration arm that handles a payment from a distributor, determining which royalties belong to which investor, and then paying those out. Um, so I guess as far as legal ownership goes, that's the purchase agreement between a buyer and seller. Now, if Royalty Exchange went out of business, if we were no longer to handle that administration aspect, a part of our terms of use is the accounting agreement that you can click on and review. And what that says is if we no longer exist and we're not able to perform our functions anymore, then the investor can get a power of attorney basically to collect those royalties on their own, so that we're kind of removed from that if something were to happen, we're no longer to facilitate those payments.
Okay, cool. And then last two questions here. Oh, one and a half. Are there experts in royalty investing? And if so, who can I get independent advice from? I would caution you getting independent advice. Um, and I would say read our guides and our walkthroughs. I would say that there are experts in royalty investing, and they are investing in royalties. So I'm not sure that there would be anyone who you can get independent advice from, at least not that I'm aware of. So I would say, take any investment advice with a grain of salt, and read the materials that we have so you can understand the big picture of how the ecosystems work, royalties are generated, all that, and to make the best decision for yourself. Um, yeah, that's what I would advise. Thoughts, Rob?
Yeah, obviously we can't give advice, but as far as independent information, I think Royalty Exchange is a fantastic platform. We've got so many um, educational materials that are agnostic as to what type of royalty, any specific royalty on the site. It really just talks about the marketplace in general, how this all works. I think certainly a great place to start. Stopping short of giving any advice, but at least getting education. Those tools I think are a really good place to start.
Yeah. And the last one here is what is the immediate impact from AI and royalty investing? Um, we've kind of talked about this a lot today already. So I'm not sure I have much else to add. Rob, do you have anything else you want to add? I think we've kind
Yeah,
of covered
if
it.
if the if the keyword there is immediate, I think it's probably too early to have any sort of opinion on immediate. Things are going to play out, and different companies and stakeholders are going to respond accordingly. And I think it could go in a number of different directions or all of the different directions. But as it stands, we haven't seen a huge, if any, change in the way that royalties have flowed. The metrics that we track as far as returns and payments, over the last 9 or 10 years, I think there's still more to come on that end. So immediately, we don't see a lot. Down the road, I think we'll see more and more, and I think it's anyone's guess as to what that might look like.
Yeah. And then thank you very much for these office hours. They've been really insightful. How often do you do these? Every quarter. Um, so yeah, we'll send out a bunch of emails about it, let people know. And every week we send our marketplace update. That's got to sign up for it. So yeah, a lot of opportunities to sign up, but every quarter. Okay. Anyone else? Last call for questions. Okay, we've run a little bit over what we normally do. A lot of good questions here. If there are any straggler questions, email us, investorsroyaltyexchange.com. Um, yeah, I'm going to conclude this session. My name is John Gestel. I am your client relations, investor relations person here at Royalty Exchange. With me is Rob Bernhardt, our corporate counsel. I hope this has been helpful. Let us know how we can help. Have a great rest of your years. We will see you in the new year with our next office hours. And
Thanks, y'all.
yeah, have a great rest of your days.